then let's call the meeting to order. Since, oh, look, there he is.
Sorry, I'm late. We have a vice chair here today. There we go.
I just called us to order. But,
You take attendance.
yeah,
We start on the notes.
we have a quorum. All
Great.
5 active members are here. Our alternate is not. And I guess our first agenda item would be the meeting minutes of our April 2nd meeting.
I wanted to make a clarification that there was a typo in the
Oh.
agenda. Is that April 2024, but we do mean 2025 meeting
Okay.
minutes.
That's good. point.
Clerical error.
Fair enough. With that correction noted, do we have a motion to approve the minutes?
So you first. Okay. So
Okay,
moved.
thank you.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion or comments? Hearing none, let's go ahead and put it to a vote. We're voting on whether to approve the April 2nd minutes. All in favor? All right, and it's unanimous. Okay, that takes us to other agenda items. 2, our informational report on capital improvement program report and budget.
Yeah, let's hear it.
Hi, sorry, I was just making sure.
My apologies to everyone here for being tardy, and to committee members and to the public at large and those on the phone. My apologies also. The best laid plans, as they say.
Great. So I'll be presenting on our new CIP tonight. It went to council for approval actually this past Monday, along with our city's budget. Tonight, I'm just gonna give a quick overview of what our CIP is, projects we've completed this current fiscal year that we're proposing for next fiscal year.
Can you speak a little louder, please?
Sure, and a quick recap along with what we anticipate doing for the future of the CIP. So the CIP is a 3-year planning tool, and it includes annual programs and projects, all the different funding sources that go into funding our projects and programs, and rough cost estimates for all the different projects. And it's split into 4 different categories: building facilities, parks, storm drain, and transportation. And year 1 of the 3-year CIP is usually what gets approved with the council's budget.
Is that what was approved this time?
Correct. Yep. And then here are just some of the, how to move this off someplace. So these are some of the projects we've completed on non-transportation categories. We've done some upgrades at AJ Borough Community Center. We've also done some in other community centers like Terra Linda, where we also upgraded the partition walls, and there's currently a master plan kind of going on in that area as well. We've definitely done some upgrades to our storm drain system. We have some really old corrugated metal pipe, and I think this year we replaced over 300 linear feet of it. And here's just some examples of what it looked like when we were doing the repair. And then we also had our B Street culvert that we had to replace. So it's been kind of ongoing for a couple years, and we finally finished that up this year, which then gave us the opportunity to do some resurfacing on B Street and restriping. These are some of the projects we've completed in the transportation category this year. There are some parking striping that we did. We upgraded curb ramps on Center Street in preparation for future pavement restoration work or rehab work. We've also done some concrete repairs on Fremont and Marquard, and we've also upgraded our backup battery systems. We installed new ones and replaced some old ones, and Kelly was actually our lead for a lot of that, which we really appreciate. And then we also completed our major pavement maintenance project for this year. Here we are is an overview of year 1 for fiscal year 25-26. As you can see, a lot of our funding goes to projects, but there's also a portion that we set aside for annual programs. These are for reoccurring needs, either routine maintenance or just pavement maintaining our pavement index, versus projects are one-time efforts that we do. And the pie chart on the right-hand side just splits that same budget, but based on the 4 categories in the CIP that we have.
4 categories of
projects, correct?
Okay. So is that money on the right? It looks like it's the same amount.
Correct,
Okay, all right.
it's the same thing, yeah. So our proposed budget for fiscal year 25-26 is about almost 16 million. And with 21% of that being grant funding.
So Joanna, that's the proposed
Through the chair.
through the chair.
Could we
Hold
reserve
the, yes, okay.
questions? Thank you.
Mhm.
Here's a quick snapshot of what our work plan looks like for 25-26, and here's snapshot number 2. So these are all the different projects and programs that we have. If you see on the graph, there's straight edges versus like arrows on the lines, and that means if it's straight edge, it's generally where it's anticipated to start or end, versus the arrows means that it continues. So if there's an arrow at the beginning, that means it's like a carryover project, that's a multi-year, versus if it kind of the arrow continues past next fiscal year, means that the project's gonna be ongoing for a little bit longer.
Can you keep that on for a second?
Can you read that?
Yes,
Yeah, so there's a total of 50 at the bottom here. So
but not all 50 are listed.
correct, it's on the prior page.
Okay, how many are transportation out of that?
Can we hold questions? Yeah, we'll get to that. Great question. But total, we have 6 annual programs, 24 rollover projects, and 20 upcoming projects. So diving into annual programs first, 5 out of the 6 are transportation related, and it totals to about 4.3 million just in annual programs. And we'll talk more about what these programs include further down in the slide. Here's a quick overview of the budget for each of the categories that are non-transportation. In buildings and facilities, we're anticipating about 5.3 million. Parks is about 600,000, and storm is about 1.1 million in improvements or ongoing maintenance in this upcoming year. And then split into the pie chart of different funding sources. So as you can see for building facilities, it's mostly there's like 4 different sources. There's capital improvement fund, measure E, which is our essential facilities fund, measure P, which is the newly adopted fund that we have for recreational centers and libraries, and then also 603 for building maintenance. For parks, we have our building maintenance, 241, which is the parks measure A, and then capital improvement fund. And for storm, it's actually largely supported by grant funding because we don't have a lot of revenue sources for storm drain. And then next, here's our transportation, which is the meat of what we're trying to present on today. These are on the pie chart indicates that most of our transportation projects are funded by grants, about 62%. The non-grant funded sources are listed on the left-hand side, which includes impact fees, HUTA, road maintenance and rehabilitation program account fees, and then funding from TAM. And our total budget for the upcoming year is 4.1 million, but this is just newly appropriated funds. It doesn't include like carryover from prior years.
Just for point of clarification, not to answer the question. It's 4 million, it's 4 million here, and on the non-transportation was 7 million. Approximately.
Correct. So for projects, that's correct. However, for the annual programs, we have 4.3 million. So we're really looking at 8.4 million that's going toward, or
So that last slide didn't show us any of that.
correct. This is only projects. This is just for projects. So these are the 7 rollover projects that we're anticipating, and all of them are grant funded except for our bike and ped plan update, which we're using from like either one of the other funding sources that we talked about in the prior slide.
Can you hold that last slide for a second, please?
And then these are the 4 upcoming projects that we have. Some of them for Canal Street Power Line undergrounding. We actually are not providing any budget or allocating budget towards that because it's actually being funded by Rule 20A board credits. And then Lincoln Ave and improvements are funded by HSIP, which is Highway Safety Improvement Program, grant cycle 12. And then we've got some other projects that's a continuation of the Third Street Safety and Rehabilitation Project that we completed recently. So jumping into our annual programs, two of them is our city-led sidewalk repair program and pavement management program. In our sidewalk repair program, in addition to like concrete shaving that we do to remove offsets, we also upgrade like curb ramps and stuff, similar to what we did for Center Street, to prepare for future pavement restoration work, especially ones that are more I guess like a deeper restoration that would trigger ADA compliance requirements. And then for our pavement management program, we're actually in the process of finalizing our 3-year pavement management program. We're currently going through review through the different utility agencies to ensure that we're not duplicating any efforts in pavement work. And then we continue to do our slurry projects every year. And then this is also going to include some of our dig out projects where there's deeper like alligator cracking or like potholes, and that's going to help repair some of that. And then this also includes one of our TAM funded projects, which is the Nova Albion Bikeway and Pathway Gap closure. We're planning to do some of the bulb outs and striping as part of our pavement projects. That way we can kind of become more efficient with our dollars and resourcing for project management and construction management. Two other programs that we have is one, the bridge maintenance program, which allows us to maintain both vehicular and pedestrian bridges. Some of the bridges that we have on Caltrans and National Bridge Inventory list is up to about almost like 20. And then we also have a bunch of other ones that don't qualify as an NBI bridge. So usually they're like smaller, don't take vehicular load. And we're trying to like take an inventory of all of that so we can really understand what our maintenance needs are and compare that with a capacity. As part of this program, we're also trying to seek funding through the Caltrans Highway Bridge Program to help with our projects. One of the ones that we are currently applying for is for Lincoln Avenue Bridge. And then we also have our Public Hillside and Road Stability Program. This gives us the opportunity to kind of do routine maintenance on the hillsides where we understand, especially during like stormy events, we want to make sure we're maintaining the street access, public access, and clearing out any debris that's behind like debris walls so that it doesn't overflow into the roads. And then we're also able to do minor upgrades or installations to kind of help prevent future erosion. Like we're able to install some erosion control. Here, our maintenance team is clearing out the debris wall. And then it also allows us to do ongoing maintenance, bring on geotechnical consultants to help us evaluate certain hillsides as needed. Last but not least, we have our annual road safety implementation program. This is really an effort to help support our road safety plan implementation, which was adopted by council last April. And then it also gives us opportunities to do other improvements, which you may have seen as prior BPAC or city council meetings, our application of AB 43, for example, to lower speed limits. We applied that and are actually lowering about 20 some segments of road within Sarafel, most of them concentrated in the downtown area as our first phase. And next year, we'll be exploring phase 2, which is applying AB 43 to other locations in the city. So here's a quick recap. Again, this is our proposed budget for fiscal year 25-26. This is inclusive of all projects and programs in terms of funding. And our future for CIP, we're going to continue to evaluate what the city needs, community needs. We really use feedback that we get from all these meetings and also from C-Click-Fix. We collect data and then anything that we see as like, oh, this will trigger CIP project or maybe can be placed as a program improvement. That's how we collect the feedback. Also at any community events like movies in the park, which are going to be coming up fairly soon. Those are opportunities for us to kind of share what we do with our CIP, how we collect feedback, and also pursue additional like grant funding to support all the work that we do. Because honestly, with our what we're currently updating our bike and ped plan, we're updating our storm drain plan. And we're gonna be developing a buildings and facility plans. And we're anticipating that our maintenance needs are gonna far exceed what we're bringing in as our revenues. And,
Could you repeat that? I couldn't hear you with the sirens going.
yeah, so we're currently going through several like citywide comprehensive planning documents. We've already completed the Parks and Rec. We're currently updating our bike and ped plan. We are also updating or developing a storm drain plan, and we'll be developing a building and facilities plan, matching the 4 categories of work that we have to really understand like the citywide needs like comprehensively. And we're anticipating the recommendations that are going to come out of these plans is that our needs are going to far exceed the amount of funding sources and even staff capacity that we have. So we're going to continue to adapt and kind of like integrate what we learn from these citywide plans into our CIP.
Thank you.
And then if you want to see the full CIP report, a document, you can find that on our website. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you. Questions from the committee? Raise your hands and I'll take them in order.
Can you please go back to the page with the transportation projects?
That one?
Where do we find that on your website?
It's the QR code, it's in the report and it has this listed out,
It's in what report?
the CIP report that we generate every year.
And I find that, I just want to know how to find, I mean, there's a bazillion things on your website.
Yeah, so there's a QR code and I can also send you a link.
That would be great. Thank
Yeah,
you.
but it's the first thing that's been adopted, so it's the first planning document on the website.
Other questions? From the committee members?
Regarding for the bike and ped plan update, I assume most of the other money would be just from a different fiscal year. I don't know if it was from the current fiscal year or.
Correct. Yeah, so that's a great example. So we haven't expended all the funds that we awarded to our consultant from last year yet. So that money is still available and it just rolls over, correct?
So just to piggyback on that, Barry, you're looking at the $40,000
Yeah.
and wondering why it's such a minuscule amount.
No, I know the budget number is bigger than that, so I just want to get clarification.
You have any questions, Barry?
I don't think so.
Annabelle?
No, he asked, he raised his hand first.
Okay.
I have on the Canal Street undergrounding, my understanding is the timing of that is contingent on PG&E's work schedule, right? The funding is available and it's really when will PG&E get to it? Is that
Correct. Yeah, and we're really leveraging one of the other projects that are grant funded, which is the active transportation experience improvements project, because that one's based on the ATP Cycle 6 grant. And there's a timeline for when we have to spend the funding. So we've actually been meeting with PG&E monthly to make sure we get onto their work plan. And the earliest that they told us we would be able to get on is actually 2026. But recently they told us that there might be an opportunity to bring our project forward
Oh.
to align even better with our ATE project.
Okay,
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah, I think that touches on my next question is in conjunction with the undergrounding, does the city envision any other changes to the physical infrastructure of Canal Street? You know, given that it's high volume pedestrian vehicle with narrow sidewalks, chronic parking issues, all that. I'm just wondering, is there,
Yeah.
are we looking at that if this is an opportunity to do more for that stretch?
Correct, and I think not just for the physical, like the everyday use improvements, but we're also gonna be coordinating with like our sustainability team, our digital services team to make sure when we're doing the undergrounding, we're also building enough capacity for future needs, both like, you know, for more like utility services, like electrical power wise. And then for our ATE project, that includes sidewalk improvements, curb ramp improvements, transit stop improvements, and a bike boulevard.
On.
Just a point of clarification, you referenced a Caltrans NBI. Can you explain what that is for me?
Yeah, so the National Bridge List inventory list. I actually just learned about that pretty recently. I was, forced to learn more about it more recently. And Caltrans actually has a program where they do inspections on bridges that are underneath their, jurisdiction or, underneath their purview. And it's really based on certain criteria. A couple that I remember offhand is that it needs to be at least like 20 feet wide and span. And then other ones that it's carrying vehicular load. And I think there are other things that they look at too, but they generate this list. And every year, or every other year, they do inspections and they share their inspection reports with the city. So that we understand like what type of maintenance are needed and where are some of the challenges that they see. The city have actually been successful in adding like several bridges to that list by doing our own inventory. And like submitting forms saying like, hey, we've identified one that is 20 feet in span and carries vehicular load. And, there's a long checklist, right? But we've been doing that as well. And once you're on the NBI list, then you can qualify for the Highway Bridge Program funding. So that's one of the really significant pieces of being on that list.
Okay, thank you. One other question was on the canal crossing. I saw there wasn't any funding budgeted for that. Is there any thinking, I know that's kind of a big project with potentially a very long time horizon. Is there anything that's going to move it in the next couple of years potentially?
Yeah, so we actually didn't have any funding for this year because we appropriated 1.5 million last year. So that's also another one of those rollover situations. And we actually are learning a lot about what's required on constructing or designing a new bridge. And all the different permitting agencies that want to be involved. So that's actually something we've been working on. We've been doing a lot of research and are hoping to prepare a more comprehensive RFP to bring on a design consultant. And we're anticipating releasing that later this year.
Thank you.
To go back to the notes on the Southern Heights Bridge, boy, there's every exception in the world on that bridge. Pretty much.
I'm gonna keep the conversation.
Sorry.
If you want to make that comment.
No.
I have a bridge comment too.
Sorry.
It's okay. Sean, any others?
Those are my questions. Thank you.
Bill or Annabelle, did you want to?
Okay. Oh, okay, fine.
There are the two assembly bills that the committee has been interested in, the 413 and the 43. So the first, you mentioned for the increasing visibility of crosswalks, so no parking close to some of the intersections. That applies to many intersections.
Yeah.
What is that work plan going to be like? How do you envision prioritizing that? What's the role of the committee in all of those?
Yeah, that's a great question. We've actually been trying to learn from other jurisdictions on what they've done to try to implement AB 413. I think just in our neighborhood, right, we're trying to be sensitive about like, we don't want to install like too much striping or signage where it causes like sign pollution or whatnot, but we also want to be mindful of like implementing it. So we're trying to develop like kind of a phased implementation plan similar to AB 43. We're likely gonna, roll out with like downtown area where it's like denser areas and then roll out into like other neighborhoods. So right now our traffic engineer is actually helping us develop like an outline of proposed policy or implementation plan. And we anticipate bring that to BPAC once we have something that's a little bit more vetted out.
Does the state have a deadline for when this must be implemented?
I think right now it's already enforceable, right? But it's just that whether we have additional signage or striping to help like kind of alert people is kind of like a different parallel effort.
I guess this isn't really the time for comment. My little comment on this, I think it could be a great opportunity for the city to be really reactive to the needs of community members. If there could be like a quick stripe, someone is like, this intersection's dangerous. This could be a quick stripe thing.
Yeah.
I know I campaigned for an intersection for like a couple of years and it got done after a couple of years, but it'd be nice like to.
Right.
As you do that policy, I think that would just be like an easy win, if someone could like call in, have an issue, and then you could like build into the plan. Yeah, we could do that. I'm sorry, that was my comment. My other question, phase 2 of AB 43. So we have the downtown corridor. Again, how are you planning to prioritize that? And is that another place where you could get community feedback for implementation?
So I think for phase one of AB 43, we actually came to BPAC and to council and we presented what our recommendations are.
Sure.
So right now, we actually have developed exhibits to kind of implement new signage and new striping. And for the 24 roadway segments that we're recommending.
Yeah, but you chose those segments, you know, and in mainly limited areas, you know, it's primarily the downtown corridor that we did that. I guess then there were some other ones.
Well, I think AB 3 also has specific provisions, like you have to meet certain criteria, so that's kind of what we're going off of. And downtown is usually like the
Sure has the most. yeah.
most, like, right, we're also reviewing our local road safety plan, like where do we have the most collision, like. So that's kind of how we're basing that off of. I think phase two, it's really like, how do we look at the other areas? And we're really looking at places with like high concentration of vulnerable like users. So kind of like near schools or near like parks, community centers. So that would probably be like the second phase. Yeah, and we do anticipate coming back to BPAC again, once we have that more dialed in. But I think right now, we just want to make sure we're implementing all the new signage first, see how that goes, monitor it, because that might come build into a recommendation for phase two.
Those are my real questions. My less real question, how are power line undergrounding and utility undergrounding and meter upgrades? Why are those bucketed as transportation?
So I have that same question.
That's a great question. I
It's a
think-
lot of dollars and it's.
A
Right,
lot of dollars.
Yeah.
I think it also, because a lot of times it gets partnered with other streets improvement projects, just like utilities projects.
Like the canal when you explained.
Correct, like the canal one, yeah, and then a lot of times to underground, you tear up the road, you have to do other improvements, you have to upgrade sidewalks, roadways. So usually it's called a utility undergrounding project, but there's a lot of streets components that are related.
But if we're talking about money spent,
Mhm.
that's money ostensibly for transportation being spent on non-transportation. So I have the same question. So let's just talk about, for example, if I can just.
Go ahead.
You remove power lines. Well, I'm not going to dispute the value of that for fire safety. I'm not going to dispute the aesthetic value of that. But does that make the sidewalks less usable or more usable? Does it make the road safer for pedestrians or bicyclists? So I'm a little bit.
So undergrounding utilities also includes removing utility poles, for example, which widens sidewalks and gives pedestrians more room.
That's a
to,
good
like-
theoretical answer, but if you can you go around on all those projects and point out where it's pedestrian or bicycle an enhancement or
I think
improvement?
Second Street is a great example because we did underground a lot of the overhead lines for the cycle track and then also the sidewalk.
Mhm.
That's like, yeah.
So how much of it do you think is just kind of helping to scoop up money to complete those projects?
Can you rephrase that question?
How much is the engineering department taking money from real transportation issues and applying it to non-transportation issues?
So the utility undergrounding is actually paid for by PG&E sport credits, which was a program that was previously developed by PG&E. So they actually distribute like dollars worth credits
Okay,
for different agencies to use. Yeah. So if we don't use it, we actually would lose it and it would get reassigned to a different agency.
Is that funding? Sorry, I was just gonna ask if that funding included the concrete work.
she can answer that question through me.
Sure.
Can you restate that?
Does the funding from PG&E include the work on concrete roads and sidewalks?
Through the chair, do you want to
Yes, you can
Um,
rephrase that.
make sure there's no more?
No, I have a
questions
whole
from-
bunch of questions, so.
Okay.
Yeah,
But
you can go. I
she
can
can
take that.
jump in on my time, so. That question, because that's a relevant question that I would,
Okay, so that's your question.
yes.
Okay, yeah, so PG&E usually creates an estimate and includes anything that involves restoration of whatever they tear apart. So if they had to tear apart the sidewalks and install the underground utilities, it would also include the restoration of the sidewalk. along with it.
Restoration back to its original shape or restoration.
To the current.
design?
The current code. Current standards.
Okay. Do you have any more questions or comments?
A small one to build off that. And my question is like, does the city have design standards for like what their ideal sidewalk would look like? You know, like, you know, is there, you know, going forward, our sidewalks should be X feet wide without obstruction, without, you know, without turns. I ask this because I know countywide, they're anticipating loss of dollars and less projects. And so in terms of like moving projects forward and the design review, the point is like every new, like anytime we have to repave, just the standards, we do all the safe streets upgrade as part of it. You know, we're gonna, you know, we will have this, we'll have, you know, whatever, this bike lane, this sidewalk, every time we do any project. And does the city have a standard like that? So like anytime something's underground, just by default, we'll do these improvements with it. Or maybe that doesn't apply. Maybe sidewalks are just 4 feet always and yeah, I don't know.
So whenever we do sidewalk improvements, it's actually based on, we don't have city adopted standards, so we actually defer to the county standards.
Okay.
Or Caltrans standards, whichever one's
Oh,
more
cool.
stringent or applicable to what we're doing. There are certain planning documents like downtown precise plan, for example, where they might call for like a wider sidewalk. So that's also something we're gonna be looking into as part of our policy when we upgrade our citywide bike and ped plan.
My little devil's advocate, the downtown precise plan explicitly had recommendations for what to do when B Street was changed in different directions. There was a whole page with theoretical diagrams and I talked about it and I came to council to talk about it and none of that was implemented as part of the change. And so, you know, so I say like you have a plan, but that plan is different than a standard. And if we followed a standard, they would say, okay, our standard is like our plan says our near-term transformation, when you do this, this is what we'll do, and that was not done. Which I don't like, you know, you know, my comment, that wasn't gonna be a question, is I really appreciate all these thoughtful planning documents, you're going to bridge inventory, and I think it's great to be able to categorize the need. I was involved, I represented BPAC on the Parks and Rec one, and my thing from that is like, they just need an impossible amount of dollars for all these improvements, which just means the prioritization is the most important thing, you know, and so I think it's really important to do that throughout. I just don't like missing, like we have the plans, but then we like really need to follow them, and I get upset when we don't follow them. That's why I like the idea of these standards. That was, I don't know if that was a question or a comment or a rant, maybe all three.
Don't take it.
Good point. Any other, go ahead, Barry.
Back to AB 413. So there's going to be a process to prioritize which locations get, and has it been decided how? And you mentioned how, I mean, is it going to be just using red curb, or is it going to be using signage, or?
I think there's been discussion of both, kind of depending on the area, because, you know, we also don't want to start having red curb appear everywhere. I think there's definitely a consideration for like the character of the current neighborhood already, where we're going to try to add any type of striping. We understand that's usually the most effective, but for areas that might not have striping, we might want to consider using signage. So those are kind of some of the tools we're looking at.
Right. I mean, is there any education program going? Because I think most people just wouldn't be aware of it without seeing any kind of signage or red curb.
Yeah, I feel like that's always like a struggle because we try to
Yeah.
get the message out there, right? We definitely have our website, and those are definitely things like, I don't know if any, one here actually attended our Public Works Week, like open house, but that was one of the things that we were sharing about and trying to like, we're developing like flyers or like looking at putting up together a brochure. And our city traffic engineer is really leading a lot of that effort. Yeah, I think we actually, not for AB 413, but I think it was for a different traffic calming measure or like tool, like our traffic engineer actually spoke with like the school district just to see how we can educate the students. Oh, I think it was the Hawk system on like how to use the Hawk system. So that's something, that's like another effort that our traffic engineer is making.
Is there any planned effort to do any enforcement around 413, like, or at least to do warnings or something at the beginning, or just to get
Yeah,
people used to that idea?
That's a great question that I would probably have to defer to a PD department. Yeah, but that's something we do bring up to them a lot because we understand that enforcement, education, and engineering is all very critical to this. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
So I have a few questions. So you showed us the proposed budget for 2025, and you said there was some rollover stuff. how much was the number up there for what was spent in the prior fiscal year, and I just didn't see it? Did you show that?
No, we did not show the prior fiscal
Okay.
year, because technically we're not done yet.
Right,
Yeah,
so,
So-
but how much, if you're claiming that there's, about 14 or 15 million, I'm sorry,
16 million
yeah.
for next year.
15, yeah, next year. What was allocated for this?
The current fiscal year was about 33 million. I think our anticipated actual like funding that we've actually spent or we have encumbered is about 18 million. So we're anticipating rolling over about 10.
And so that 10 is the ongoing projects would then be supplemented by the 15 million.
Correct. Yeah.
So we're looking at a $25 million.
Correct.
Um,
And if I can add to
go
that,
ahead.
I think what that's really showing is that we're having a much better understanding of capacity and funding. And I think eventually we're gonna start narrowing the amount of like rollover versus like active funding appropriated. Because if you kind of look at it, like last year, we were
Right.
thinking 33, and next year realistically, it's really like more like 25. So we're kind of like narrowing that gap between how much we're trying to appropriate versus actual like capacity.
Right. Without getting into the weeds on the budget, which will put me to sleep, I'm more interested in the focus of we've got a bucket of money, how much is being spent that's relevant to this committee, bicycles and pedestrians. So even though a number of the things that you showed us earlier are all interesting and give us some contextual understanding of what's going on, I don't really care about underwater pipes, so to speak. Interesting, but not relevant to this committee. So what I really want to see is how do we spend more money on bicycles and pedestrian safety? And so for example, kind of going on the utility underground roadway stability, both the photographs that you showed, look like they're really intended to help make sure cars go down the road rather than pedestrians or bicycles. So I'm again wondering, and you don't have to answer this question, it's theoretical, but it gives me a slightly jaundiced look at how is money being categorized and how's it being spent. So is roadway stability really stable because if there's a mudslide, people can't go up and down some major artery, or is it because it's helping out pedestrians and bicycles?
I think it depends on the situation. There was a photo where it was actually a hillside next to a sidewalk,
I saw that.
right? So then that would also help pedestrians as well. And in a lot of areas, bicyclists are sharing the road with vehicles.
If pedestrians walk in that stretch, also where you showed, they may never walk there. And I bicycle in all parts of San Rafael where there's nobody ever walking, there's cars going all the time. So again, it goes to how much is the money being spent on things relevant to this committee and improving pedestrian and bicycle safety. And kind of go on to the point, and I had this under a slightly different, it's developing the standard for safe streets. So rather than going to Phil's point, rather than having a standard versus plan, I know that there's at least 2 jurisdictions in the East Bay that actually implemented plans that mandate when standard road work is done, repaving, resurfacing, not even as disruptive as burying underground utilities, that they require by law that safe street designs are implemented contemporaneously with the repaving. So they put in the bike lane, they widen the sidewalk, they put in bumped out intersections, a number of, different things. And I know at least one of those utilities did it by initiative because the city council was kind of slow to the beat. So I'm just wondering if that's going to have to be an option somewhere down the road, or whether we can convince the city that it needs to adopt those kind of standards. So that's something maybe this committee can look into, but I'm putting it on the table as something that you can take back to the department too. folks kick around. Because I think that's one way to crack the nut is every time something's done, just done it in a more comprehensive way that addresses some of the issues rather than, well, we're doing this. And it sounds like that's done to some extent already from what you described with the utility underground and some of those, but it isn't done. It isn't done where you have to do it, done where the money. And on your last slide, you can go to that, very last slide. So I am interested in the theoretical, where would that bridge be, canal crossing? I'm not seeing the adoption of the pedestrian bicycle planning in there.
It's here.
No.
Or,
Like
what
you're
do
saying,
you mean?
okay, we're looking at all this stuff. Go back to that last. Continue to. All right, so that's,
that's part of like the creation for the, like, the CIP, right?
okay. So under that, there could be a dot that says incorporate EPAC updates. Right, I mean, we're talking about a CIP planning process, and at the same time, we've got this whole update, and I'm not seeing the connection there, other than it's going through your department.
Well, I think that's what the city planning documents include, because it's not just a bike and ped
I
plan,
know,
but there's a
it'd
storm.
be nice if it was actually written down somewhere, rather than, I think that's what it includes,
Note taken.
explicit. Explicit that, yes, we're going to adopt the plans, or at least look at them and review them. And just out of curiosity, on one of your slides, you mentioned something like point sandpaper road design. If you take 30 seconds and just elaborate on what that is. I know there's at least one person in the room who's interested in what that might be.
It's actually still a coordination item with the county. April probably has a little bit more background than I do on that, but it's to redesign kind of like what that's gonna look like, and our share is to help with the resurfacing of that area.
And hopefully implement safe street standards at the same time.
Correct.
Any questions, Annabelle, before I open it to the public?
No.
Any questions on this presentation from public members? All
You can
right,
talk about second and fourth. It was
Yeah,
part of that.
I could talk about second and fourth. I was gonna save that for a comment towards the end.
You can talk
But,
twice.
well, let's
yeah.
save it for then, because I'm gonna
Yeah.
actually make a report on
Sure, wonderful.
meeting with you folks as well,
yeah, thank you.
and then we can go into that. Okay, thank you. It was a good comprehensive presentation.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah. You know, little stuff that was extraneous to transportation, but we'll sit through it.
Nice job with your first battery project. The signals.
Okay, well, so we only have one agenda item tonight, and we're gonna.
Wait, I just want to go ahead and
Oh, sorry.
see if there's a motion to adopt the report and all the questions.
Wishing to adopt?
20 seconds. Okay, Annabelle seconds. Anyone opposed? Unanimous, yay.
Cool, thank you.
All right, go ahead, staff report, project updates. And may I ask, where's our other staff liaison, since you're the co-one? And you're trying to get out of being stuck with this all the time.
He's out sick. Yeah.
Covers soon. Time for the August meeting.
Okay, so our first staff report update is on the citywide bicycle and pedestrian plan.
Kelly, can I ask you to speak louder, both for the folks in the back, and you have a very soft voice, and is anybody on, do we have anybody on the line? There were some people.
Yeah, there are.
Okay, all right, just so they can hear you as well, thank you.
Of course. So since we gave our presentation during our last meeting here, we've had some past outreach events. We tabled at the Canal Alliance Community Fair, and we also had an in-person open house workshop. So those both took place back in May. And we had some very good detailed discussions with many community members. And specifically at the in-person workshop, we had about 30 people show up, and we tried to focus a little bit more on pedestrian travel, because I don't know if you've noticed, but the interactive map online has a lot of good bicycle related feedback. So we're trying to get both pedestrian and bicycle feedback. And then some of our upcoming outreach events includes this Sunday, we're going to be at the farmers market from 8 to 1 p.m. And we also have a live virtual workshop on Tuesday, June 17th from 12 to 1. So if you are free during your lunch break, you can join.
Or spread
and-
the word.
Yeah, and spread the word to your friends and family. More information can be found about both of these events and all the bicycle and pet stuff, as you know, on our website. And I have been keeping the email list for those of you who have subscribed, updated with our outreach events, and will continue doing so as we move through the phases of the project. And because this is our last couple of outreach events in our first phase of outreach for this project, it ends in June. So June 30th will be when the online survey closes and we stop taking feedback on the interactive online map. Yeah, and then there's a QR code on here that takes you to the website. So our next phase is the draft plan update creation. So that includes 3 things: gap and needs assessment, project prioritization, and city design guidelines. So all this will be inclusive of what input we got from the public, and all of that input will be compiled along with all the things that I just mentioned to create a draft plan. Yeah, and then once we release a draft plan, that will take us into our second phase of outreach, which will take place in probably end of September and go through November. And that's when we will come back and ask for more specific feedback on the draft. Okay, and then the next staff report update is about a new project, or I guess a restarting of a project. The Embarcadero one-way pilot project. So if you don't know, Embarcadero is a narrow street that connects 3rd near Point San Pedro to the Montecito neighborhood. And it goes alongside the back of Santa Fe High School, like back where the baseball field is. And there's on the north side of Embarcadero Way, there's a steep drop off that kind of goes towards the baseball field. And if there are 2 cars that are heading on the street, it's kind of difficult for them to pass each other because of how narrow the street is. So usually one car has to back up and they have to go around each other. So one-way conversion efforts took place back in 2022, but the project was restarted recently due to safety concerns about vehicle conflicts and that were raised from C-Click Fix tickets and from the police department. So we're suggesting, or we're proposing a piloting of a one-way conversion. And in order to do so, we have to evaluate the effects of what the reconfigured circulation will be for all the cars that will now have to use the other roads in the area, and what the traffic volumes would be as a result of this. So our proposed timeline, it's later this month, we will share a memo with City Council. And then in fall 2025, we'll start our outreach and pre-pilot data collection. And we timed it this way so that it's the beginning of the school year, and so that all of the people who are going to school, faculty and students can be included in this data collection. And then the pilot duration will take place in fall and winter of 2025. And outreach will be continued through there, and we will take feedback from neighbors and users of the streets to see what they think about the one-way conversion.
Just for clarification, that's the baseball field right there?
Yes.
And that's a steep hilly intersection that meets at the top of the hill where that box is?
Yeah, the box on the far right.
Okay. There've been a lot of complaints of pedestrian and bicycles in that segment. Cause I bike that frequently and I never go down that street.
I don't know. But
I go up behind the high school and hook a left there.
like up here, and then you go this way?
Yep.
Okay, I'm just gonna add a sheet view.
I do one or the other. If I'm
Mhm.
training, I go up. If I'm going home, I go left, go down. but I'm just wondering. Relevance to bicycles and pedestrians.
Well, I think it's relevant because it's related to transportation, and if you are a bicycle or pedestrian, you are able to use this road, and its conversion to a one-way may change your mind whether you want to use this road or not.
Thank you.
Yeah, so our next steps are just to create the memo and share it with city council and then further plan the project. We already have a consultant who is helping us with this and updating the website.
Which direction is the one way? What way are we going?
That will be determined based on our pre-pilot data collection, so
Huh.
whichever way has most traveled.
It'll be different on weekends, right?
Ask a question. So, I'm not familiar with that street. I'm just wondering, what is the width of the street?
The exact width.
Very steep,
It's-
right from.
I feel like it's less than, or is slope or the width?
Oh, it's the width.
I think it's less than 15. I
Okay.
can't remember how narrow exactly. It might be, I feel like it's less than that.
And it's got a steep embankment on one side and a drop off on the
Yeah,
other,
yeah.
right? It's a dicey one, yeah.
Okay, I was just wondering if it was wide enough that you could put like a contraflow bike lane to allow two-way bike traffic, or maybe it's not something people would even use.
No one will use it.
Okay, well, that's what I'm saying. I'm not familiar with it.
It's by the high school mountain
This
bike.
is very steep.
The high school mountain right there has a trail on the side of the hill.
Mm,
I don't know which way they do that though.
Can I just ask, where's the section that has the dig on the road because some people scuff on it? Is that on the hook or is that after that little where the dot starts?
Right here.
Sorry to ask out of the peanut gallery here, but I think it's slightly relevant.
I don't know what you're talking
I'm not
about,
sure.
Joe, sorry. Through the chair, I don't know what you're talking about. All right, next project.
Well, so this is
Ah.
me.
Finally, okay, good.
Yeah, so kind
What are RR FPs?
of rectangular rapid flashing beacons.
Thank you.
Thank you for asking that question. You know, I realized that got cut off. Like, now that I'm looking at the slide. But so I wanted to provide an update on some prior projects we were presenting at BPAC. So Los Gamos, we're in the process of getting cost estimates and we're looking to start work this summer, and then same for Mahone Path. I think it's been a while. It took a while to get quotes from like striping contractors. They have just been really, really busy. So we're trying to get on their schedule as quickly as possible.
What's the Mahone Creek?
Oh, yeah, stay from Mahone Creek. Oh, yeah.
Oh, sorry, can we
Yeah.
talk about Mahone Creek?
Sure.
Sorry. What are we planning on? I mean, that's the current. Sorry, what did you have to say
Yes,
about?
is there a
Mahone Creek
presentation
Path?
about this?
That's what it's been like.
We thought you were talking about Los Gamas Bike.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
No, so both are happening this summer. And I think for Mahone Path, I think the green circulation has been kind of what's been happening.
Yeah,
But we're trying to enhance it with more signage and striping. Which is
Wonderful.
what we proposed, I think, several BPAC meetings ago. But it's been really hard to get striping contractors right now, so that's why we're doing it
and what
now.
are you gonna stripe on, so we were told about the Mahone Creek Path detour at BPAC, my recollection.
Yeah.
Is we're told that it's cut off and this is the other path.
Yeah.
And my only, I had a comment to look at the light for Second and Lincoln, to help that circulation. I don't know about any striping that you're planning. What is the striping you're planning for this?
So we'll be striping like a bike lane, like on Lincoln.
On Lincoln?
Yeah.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah, and then we'll also have like signs, like kind of like a detour, like, hey, go this way for
Like
bicycling.
go on the side, like figuring out the sidewalk.
Mm-hmm.
And then.
And then on
okay.
the top, on second, it's probably, we're gonna be putting signs for like a shared sidewalk and
Just a
like
sign.
that, yeah.
And remind us, is there a timeline to reopen Mahone Path? I know it's tied
The
to,
2 year.
is it 2 years?
I think
It
it's
started as,
months
it certainly
or-
has started as a 2 year project, but I don't remember
Okay.
we're a year into it.
Okay.
I don't know how far into it we are. But
You're correct, we're
Okay.
almost a year, yeah. So Spinnaker Point, traffic calming, that was initiated as a pilot project in 2024 October. I think we've gotten a lot of feedback and we've collected data, and then I think we've now reviewed all the feedback we've received, emails, see-click fixes, phone calls. And I think right now we're trying to, summarize all the findings and develop recommendations. I think a lot of it's also kind of learning like what's worked, what hasn't worked. And we've even learned a lot from our fire department, like we started mentioning like the axle like lifts and stuff to make sure like they can still drive over, like certain like traffic calming measures, and like having an example of the feedback we got is like making sure certain like traffic calming devices aren't too tall, so it doesn't scratch like the side of like the trucks, and having them more similar to what the permanent solutions would look like. So those are kind of some of the preliminary like feedback we've received, and we're trying to like summarize all that and come up with a recommendation. We plan on coming back later this summer to BPAC.
Can you give us a hint? Was it like up, down?
I feel like it was like very
Mixed.
mixed, yeah. It's like kind of hard to say, so that's why we're trying to quantify all that, yeah.
So what you were describing was that for speed cushions? Is that, because you said that you look at the axle.
Yeah, so I think we did like a traffic circle at one of the locations, and then we were also looking at putting speed humps as well. And I don't think we actually installed it as part of the original, as what we originally planned, but I think we're looking at other opportunities to put in something like that. But I think we have to measure like the height of what that speed hump would be and like the width. So that was like really interesting. We took actually several drives with like fire trucks. We observed like trash vehicles and like construction vehicles. So we did like a lot of observations out there too.
Was there speed surveys and observational type metrics to see if it was getting people to go slower and stop doing donuts in those big intersections? Cause that, I mean, that's why there's those sea of posts
Yeah.
there right now, right? To
Right,
discourage
right,
that
right.
thing.
Yeah, I think initially it was initiated based on a lot of requests from the community. So there wasn't any like but I think the post is really more based on like observations as well. Yeah.
May I ask a question?
So please,
These traffic calming pilot
Yeah.
options that you had are like standard worldwide and very known, and they're very known to work. And so, I understand you like to get public feedback and stuff, but like, these aren't controversial things. We know that they work. And so, if someone who likes doing donuts in an intersection writes in and say, I don't like this, and I can no longer do donuts in an intersection, I would judge that feedback a little differently than someone else who is doing that. So I'm curious, like, when you say, like, they're just, I mean, it's just worldwide. We have speed humps all over the place and roundabouts all over the place. They just work all the time. How do you plan on using that feedback? Is it going to sway your decision, or do you anticipate that these traffic calming options are going to start to be available in the rest of the city?
I think it's gonna be like a mixture, because I don't recall reading any feedback similar to that, but I think there were questions like, why is this post so tall? If, what we might actually do is for something more permanent is like a rubberized curb, right? So maybe at that point, like instead of using such a tall delineator, we use something a little bit shorter, but then it still guides like vehicles. So that's an example of feedback we were like getting.
Oh, perfect. That
Yeah.
makes sense. My hope is that with this traffic calming project, we demonstrated here at Spinnaker Point in these, and then I would say hopefully we can then roll it out into the rest of the city in places that want it. For example, I just am familiar with the Sun Valley because the kids at school, and I've just heard we've had people come to this committee talking about speed humps on some of those back roads in Sun Valley. I don't know the names of them, and I'm sure this applies to many other places.
Mhm.
Do you think that is a likely outcome? Is that this
I
will
think so.
be a tool in the toolbox?
Yeah, because I think one of the tools that we use is the delineators, probably like a better choice in the future. Better options in the future, but it's really to demonstrate like what a curb extension would do, what purpose that would serve, right? So that's definitely something we're gonna be installing along Lincoln Avenue, actually, we currently have 2 grants for Lincoln Avenue. one that's just for Brookdale and then Wilson Court.
Mm.
So that's something we plan on doing, using rubberized curbs to like do the curb extension. So I think it has been successful. We're using some of them in other places in the city.
Wonderful, great. I'm looking forward to that being formalized.
So is that going to kind of evolve into a program where you have like a set of approved devices and a process where neighborhoods might be able to request something or that kind of thing?
That's a really great question, and I think that really leads into like the item to the right of the screen, which is what,
Can we capture that question? We'll make sure we capture that question.
yeah, which we're really trying to do with like a Vision Zero like action plan. And you know, one of the things that we need is funding to kind of develop this and explore like even more traffic calming tools. So we're looking to reapply for the Safe Streets for All grant, which we applied for last year. Unfortunately, we were not awarded that grant. But we had met with the grant reps following that just to kind of get feedback on our application. So we're making tweaks right now to become more, I guess, competitive in application. And I think we are looking to develop some type of toolbox that we can select out of based on like what the concerns are. It might not be like selective based on like what the person's requesting, but based on what the need is, we would select tools out of that toolkit for it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I'm assuming it would have to be like the fire department would need to sign off on these things and it might be appropriate only in certain contexts, or you kind of have to
Right.
probably out a whole.
We'll
Right.
still have to do like, you know, evaluation
Right.
studies to make sure it's
Site-specific.
appropriate. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so that's a joint application between the city and the county.
Correct.
When will we know what's the timeline on
So the grant application is due the end of this month. Last year, I think we found out about it maybe 4 or 5 months afterwards. Yeah, so we'll probably find out later this year.
that? Mhm.
Okay, build on that a little bit, Chair. One more.
Go ahead.
I guess a comment, not a question. I think I mentioned it before. Petaluma has rolled out this Safe Streets nomination program. I was just looking up what it's called. And I hope that everyone could look at that. My understanding, it's been like super well received by residents in town. Basically, the Safe Streets nomination program allows people to nominate a list and they have a fund, basically a sitting fund to do some of these basically quick and easy projects and improvements. Exactly like what you're talking about, and it is my understanding that that has been very positive, so might be worth talking to them. I don't know all the details of it. I've just noticed some of these improvements changes. And I know that in the CIP, there is now a standing, there's standing some money was going in
For the
the
road
form
safety.
for road safety
Yeah.
improvements. And so I think that could be a good way, just like the painting curve, there's some like easy wins, I think people really like seeing these easy wins, and I think those would be great opportunity for them.
And I do remember you bringing this up last year too, actually. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think April and I have been looking into that
Wonderful.
for like,
So like a quick build today.
It's my understanding that's just like quick build project. You nominate for quick build projects and they're acting really quickly and people have liked them. And it seems like exactly this stuff,
Right.
like,
And they're a lot
not
cheaper.
very expensive.
Yeah.
And then it's all, of course, on their long-term plan to do things, but it is really improving a bunch of neighborhoods. I thought it was a cool idea. That's why I bring it up for
Like
you.
something we could roll in as a recommendation for the bike ped plan.
Yeah.
Any other aspects of this presentation, Kelly?
I was actually gonna say, for the SS4A, BPAC actually wrote a letter of support for the grant application last year. And I was wondering if the BPAC would also like to do that again.
Is that a request? Or is it throwing out?
I could forward it to you, or they probably have my letter. They could probably just send it to you. Yeah, you
Yeah.
could send a similar one.
Does anybody have any objections to that? I say the more money we get, the better.
Okay.
Sure, either one of you or both of you send it to me, I'll draft something and.
If I could find it.
I think we have a new letter drafted because
Oh,
we are
great.
updating certain aspects of
Okay.
our application to be more compelling.
Great.
So I can share that with
It's perfect to review.
Sure.
Should I go ahead and assume responsibility on that?
Yeah, certainly, yeah.
Okay, great, all right.
You've been signed up.
Pardon?
You've been signed up.
Signed up.
We talked about this already.
Okay, so our last project update is about the quiet zone. which if you don't know what a quiet zone is, it's a stretch of track where train operators don't blow their horns at the crossings, or they're not required to. Given that some of the signs and striping is compliant, so Novato and San Rafael has a quiet zone for the smart train. And so we just updated that to ensure that it continues. And the way that that happens is the Federal Railroad Administration comes every 3 to 4 years and will go to each crossing and make sure that the signage and striping is compliant. This was about a 2.5 month effort. So it started with us submitting a letter and existing conditions and ADT information for each crossing. And then the FRA inspector came out to do all the site visits. Saeed and I actually joined for a couple of them. It is a lot of work outside. And then they compile an inspection report, and it turned out that 13 of the 15 of our crossings required a work order. One was a private crossing, so that was completed by SMART. But all of the updates to the other 12 were completed by our DPW streets team. And yeah, they did it pretty quickly after the inspection report was provided. And it has.
What were the nature of the work orders? Just what kind
Yeah,
of things?
they
Oh,
were
you
right
can
here.
show.
Yeah, so a lot of them are refreshing of road striping, so just making sure it's more visible so that vehicles and pedestrians are more aware that there is a crossing right there, and that there aren't any train horns. So there's a sign right there that says no train horns.
Mhm.
And these are just 4 of the crossings, and a lot of them required more than just one aspect. So a lot of them was like, oh, you need to do refresh road striping along with resizing 3 different signs or 4 different signs. So definitely a lot of work. And also our streets team had to do it at like 3 or 4 a.m. in the morning in order to avoid the smart train for those that had work orders closer to the tracks.
Questions on that?
No.
Anything else? Good. Thank you. Any questions and comments on the last presentation from the public? Joe?
I'd just like to make a comment. So really appreciate that route for the bike lane on Lincoln going around the Mahone Creek path. But I do want to bring to attention the current status right on Francisco Boulevard West at the end of Mahone Creek. I'm seeing more and more frequently slightly suspect nefarious type people parking in the bike lane on Francisco Boulevard West, kind of trading things with people from the camping zones. For example, today, there's a group of 10 of us, and there's a person with a Mercedes handing things to some people from the camping sections, Mahone Creek. So what I'm asking for is possible like attention, maybe SRPD can have a little bit more presence. Just because, I mean, there's a dozen of us and we have nowhere to go and there's cars going by, and I appreciate that it's a protected bike lane with the bollards, but I think it just needs a little attention.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay. I just want to say I once heard, just going back to your report when we we're talking about the national bridge list, that
Yeah.
there was a study done a couple of years ago where it might have been a while ago when because it was Newsom, I heard Newsom speak, and he read the report with the several thousand bridges that exist in California. You said if you read the report with structural engineers going out and doing structural testing and inspection, said it basically the state got about a D+. Said if you read that report, you would never drive over a bridge in California. So I always think of that going over bridges. So I'm glad we're addressing it here in San Rafael. So it's now time to do the commissioner reports. And Sean, anything to report?
Nothing to report. Do we, just point of order, do we need to receive the staff liaison report? Or is that-
I think it's just a report.
Yeah, I don't think
Okay.
there's any action.
Okay,
Yeah, thank you for
fair
bringing
enough,
that
thank
up,
you,
yeah.
thank you. No reports from me personally. though.
Okay. Annabelle, anything you want to bring up?
No.
Barry?
I'm good.
All right, I'll go ahead since Phil isn't here. After the April meeting, I was approached by some folks from the Hillside Group, not far from here, and some of them present here today. And met with about, I went over there one morning and met with about five or six of the local residents. And got a walking tour of the area of the second and fourth intersection and some of the neighboring streets around there. And it was actually very enlightening to see the physical reality of what was being talked about in terms of proposal. And a lot of legitimate concerns, I thought, in terms of where choke points exist, line of sight, and inability to see things that weren't being addressed by the current work plan. There was a lot of discussion about what existed in the past, what currently exists, what some of the recent changes that took place with the Second Street bike lane and how that intersected with people coming in and out of that neighborhood. And it was very enlightening. Marley, who is present here Marley, what's your last name? Rezo, who's here present in it's part of the public, had drafted some design concerns. Those have been submitted. She gave them to me, but you upgraded them, and those have been submitted to this committee along with comments. And except for your update, Marley, I believe this pretty much replicates what I was given. And everyone should have in their possession some of the comments for this meeting from the Hillside folks and the petition that was submitted along with. So that's all in the record, is that not? Okay, so I no need to move that but I would like to make a suggestion, and I would like to get BPAC's approval on, is that the submissions of the design by the Hillside community folks via Marley Brezzo, the comments that were submitted, the petitions that were submitted, both versions, all be passed on to the bicycle pedestrian update group. I don't know if by merely being submitted here, they're also transmitted to the folks. And if not, I'm looking for approval from the committee that they be formally submitted as part of the input.
Well, this is not an agendized item. We can't take an action.
Yeah, okay.
But
I'm looking for at least an idea so that I can make a
I
formal.
mean, these are part of the public record and they're
Yeah.
part of the agenda, so we don't even have, they just by default are in, so. we
Yeah,
don't
but
need to-
but part of the question is, are those folks gonna get them and look at them? Are they gonna become, I mean, if public comment ends on June 30th and there's two more only, the question I wanna have, the dialogue I wanna have is, are these being incorporated and being looked at by that group?
Are you talking about the project design group, or which group are you referring to?
The actual,
the consultant team,
yeah, the consultants, the folks who are kind of taking the lead on.
Yes, I mean, we accept all the comments and we are passing them along to our consultant team. I don't think there's any formal action that needs to be taken. on
Okay.
that, but-
We can't take any formal action.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, so Thanks, Phil, but I'm not looking for your parliamentarian expertise. So I just want to make sure that these are getting over to the group. And they are part of the public input. Yes,
Yes.
Kelly, yes. Okay,
Is
you were
it for
standing there
the
publicly
bike and ped plan or for
Yeah.
the project?
for the
The
bike and
second-
ped plan upgrade.
Oh. Sorry, so do you want it as? Sorry, can you clarify what your question is?
I would like, yes, I will. I'm happy to do
Thank you.
it. Sorry, I'm unclear. I'll try to frame it so it's intelligible. I want to make sure the documents that have been submitted by the Hillside folks, everything. The design plans, the comments and the email, the petitions, that those all make their way to the bicycle pedestrian plan update group. Whatever you're calling it, because I'm assuming it's not just the consultants, it's also you guys to some extent.
Got it. So you want the comments to be considered with the citywide bike and ped plan update project.
Correct.
Got it. I don't think that was requested in the email, but
I'm
I think,
requesting it as the chair. And I'll write it as a formal letter if you need to. So what
I guess I want to clarify, because this project's currently in design, right? So getting it in the plan is not gonna help. What you want, I think, is to get it to the designers as input into their design, right?
Thank you, Barry. It's good to have a transportation expert.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that possible?
yes, so this is already shared with the actual project team.
Even the most current,
Everything that we get, we're passing on to our team to make sure everyone is seeing the information.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Then in terms of a formal action, I'd also kind of like, I'm just trying to get a sense of the committee here. And whether this is a worthwhile endeavor, that we have some kind of a update on this issue at the August meeting. And wait, before you answer. I'm trying to get a sense of the committee, whether that's something they're interested in, or is it just me?
Well, I don't need another update on the project until they have designs to show us, but.
Designs to show us, okay? Any other feelings?
Yeah, I just don't know what the timeline is for the different steps that they're gonna be hitting.
When might that?
I don't know offhand. Yeah.
Ballpark, only guess, 2 weeks, 7 months.
I think we should have an update probably by like the next VPAC. If you're recommending to add it for the next agenda item, I can take note of that.
I am recommending.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, but there's no actual action.
Yeah, no, I got it.
Okay.
I got it. No, I'm just trying to line stuff up because there's a lot of people and they have legitimate concerns. I can't address them all, not being the technician, I can. But I know it is a concern for a lot of people and I want to make sure it's on the table. You were the only one who hasn't given a report.
No reports to give?
Okay. Then, is there anything else for Joanna or Ellen? Okay. Then, it's open time for the public and we raise our hands. Marley, you're first.
I would like to, I appreciate everyone receiving the comments that I've made and the drawings that I've made. There are just ideas. Any piece of them and their integration would be, greatly appreciated. And I think an improvement to the safety of this intersection. Although with my verbal comments, rather than revising what I've written, I would like to go over the frustrations of my hillside, which is that a lot of us feel unheard. We are facing a situation where Eli Hill, our only representative for our community, is not allowed to be a part of the city council meetings because he resides on Marquardt Ave. So we are feeling underrepresented. We have, in mass intended a community outreach meeting that we got no substantive, understanding of any actionable change coming from that. We've attended city hall meetings, and we do not know what content of the city hall meetings makes it here to BPAC for our comments from there, or what comments from here makes it to the city representatives and the mayor. So there's a little bit of opacity we're dealing with within this building and our ability to know if we've really affected any change with our influence and with our efforts to be, have an open dialogue. And so that frustration really, I think, underpins a lot of us feeling like we really need to, kind of dig our heels in deeper and try and be more heard, because we are the people who use this intersection, both walking, biking, and in vehicles constantly. And I and many of my neighbors deeply feel that the current crossing across Second Street is an unsafe crossing. And we want to see the changes that get implemented make true improvements to that crossing, because if I had to make an estimate on the brick utilization of the sidewalks, this was probably last done in the 70s, maybe the early 80s. And it will probably likely be as long until we see another improvement made on this. So if the right actions aren't taken in this opportunity with this funding that is available, we will miss our chance to make any of those improvements. So that is the heart of why we are petitioning, why we are submitting so many ideas. We're looking for anything that we can get, any help, response, interaction, dialogue. I understand Gray, who is the project manager, has been out for many months. I've been holding off on hoping to meet with them, but I would love to meet with some of the engineering staff directly, just to understand, because I am not an engineer. I don't know how feasible any of the ideas I've submitted truly are. They're just based out of my understandings of, my father was a city planner. So I have loose understandings of things, but it is not my role. So I'm a game developer, and I've built neighborhoods in a computer for a video game, but they aren't real. And they don't have to adhere to code, other than programmer's code. But yeah, so I do appreciate all of your time, Mark. I very much appreciated your time coming out to our street. The city manager has met with a few of us. We very much appreciate her time, but we kind of been told that the current design adheres to Project Zero without any explanation on how it adheres to Project Zero in a way that is better than the ideas that I have submitted. Thank you.
Thank you, Marley. Any other issues, comments from the public? No.
Might I add one thing just on my recently submitted document this morning?
Sure.
That was something I just came across this week. I do not know the true location of the fatal accident that I found on the pedestrian map. I am making my best guess possible by aligning maps. So yeah, and when I meet with the traffic engineers, maybe I can garner some greater insight into what was the cause or where that accident truly happened. But it was unsettling to find a fatal accident on that road without it being put forward on the webpage, along with the other collisions that have happened involving pedestrians and bicyclists. Thanks.
Thank you. Right, any other comments, issues from the committee? Staff?
I was just thinking about a couple of ideas that I had for possible future agenda items. I don't know when a good time would be, but at some point it would be interesting to hear a report on use of the bike share. And just, I don't know if the
That just came out, the MTC just.
Oh, did they?
released their first step
for the North Bay.
for the North Bay.
Okay, well, maybe I'm.
That's.
Go ahead, say that louder.
Recently. Oh, the request just came out. They released the numbers. The last numbers I saw were the April numbers. It was great growth in it.
And who released it?
Super high. It was
Everybody's
it was an
MTC?
MTC thing.
Okay. Good. I mean, partly, the numbers are one thing. I'm also just curious. I'm really just curious as to how people use it. And I don't know if that's something that they share, like where they pick it up and where they drop it off. And
I don't remember I don't think they talked about where they pick it up and where they dropped it off. I don't think I saw that, but I do know San Rafael and Larkspur were the most two used of all the stations in Murray and Sonoma County.
Interesting.
Where the
other thing I was thinking about was just walking around downtown and the various like the bollards on the Third Street corridor, and then also just seeing the, the ones over on the cycle track. And there's a certain pattern where a lot of them seem to be getting hit by the vehicles. And, the ones on Third Street are very predictable. You can tell, well, okay, cars are going this way. You can tell which one's gonna be hit just before you even walk up to the intersection. And I'm just wondering if there's been any assessment of what could be done to prevent that from happening, or if any examination was done of those collisions.
I will take note of that. I don't have an answer immediately, but yeah.
I mean, I don't know if it's just that they're, do they need to be set back more from the edge of the roadway, or what, just.
Made out of steel, damage a few cars.
I think some of them is also like the larger trucks, they're not really used to having the bollards there, so a lot of
Right.
times that's what it is. I think you might have seen some of the stop lines, we've actually moved those back to give more room for like the turning space. So, yeah, I think that's been the sense. It's really larger trucks that are not like really paying attention, and then they kind of swerve into it. I think it was, when it first was installed, I think people were also, like, everyone was having a hard time getting used to them, but I think now it's really just like the larger trucks.
Ooh.
Yeah, and the local vehicles are really a little bit better about it.
Some of them have comments.
Anything else?
Yeah, I know.
Shoot.
And, I'm gonna call
It's
it.
explosive
Adjourn.
material inside.
Sean, can I talk to you for 2 minutes?